Media good? All right, well, first of all, thank you all for being here today, especially because of our weather situation. I'm Peter Corroon. I'm chairman of the Utah Democratic Party. And today we want to discuss one of the most important issues in our state, education. Utah tops the nation in many surveys regarding jobs, entrepreneurship, and the quality of life, but unfortunately, on another list, it reveals a systematic issue that we have not dealt with in the state. Utah ranks dead last nationally in per pupil spending for education. As a result, we have some of the largest class sizes in the nation and insufficient pay for our teachers. We heard Governor Herbert speak last week about education. He outlined his new budget, including what he wants to see done regarding our students' education. They say you ought to put your money where your mouth is, and to the governor and his party, we say it is not enough. It is not enough to get us out of 20 years of taking billions of dollars out of our education system. Let's take a look at the numbers. The governor says education is his top priority, yet his budget provides less than a 5% increase in funding for our students. Education, as the number one priority for the governor, translates to a mere $206 in additional funding for each of our students. Meanwhile, $48 million was allocated for the first phase of the prison relocation. We're spending $14 million on a lawsuit to take federal lands. $53 million of Utah taxpayer money is being funneled to finance a shipping port in Oakland, California. We've seen a 1,200% increase in earmarks since 2005, each ranging from $42 million to almost $500 million. Not to mention taxpayer dollars that are being used to fund the Republican Party's fight over Senate Bill 54. For student funding for K-12 has not increased in real dollars since 2008. So today we call on the governor, the state legislature, and especially the leadership in our state house and Senate to not just talk about it, but actually do it. Increase funding in our schools. For years, our state government has chosen to prioritize other funding concerns over those of our children's and our state's future. Frivolous lawsuits over election law and public lands are taking money out of our schools and putting it into the deep pockets of lawyers and special interests. Utah classrooms hold too many students, and Utah teachers do not have the funds and the resources to support the needs of our individual students while ensuring a meaningful education for all. Increase funding to our schools so we can decrease class sizes, provide our students and teachers with the resources they need, and better compensate our hard-working teachers. Republicans talk about the economy and focus on the state's bottom line, but Utah students are not a business commodity, and investing in them is the best thing we can do to ensure our state's future and their future. If we can find $500 million for earmarks, surely we can find funding for our schools. I'll now turn the time over to Kim Irvine. Kim has taught English in our public schools for more than 15 years. She currently teaches at the South Ogden Junior High School in the Weber School District, and she is currently the president of the Utah Council of Teachers of English. And after Kim's remarks, we'll hear from Chris Zavala on my left. Chris is an aspiring author and 9th grade teacher at T.H. Bell Junior High School, also in the Weber School District. And then Lisa Arango, a parent of 4 students in public school, a teacher at Northridge High in Layton. So I'll turn it over now to Kim.
A teacher's like a candle, constantly consuming herself to light the way for others. No one becomes a teacher in Utah for the salary or the social status. We become educators because we love to teach. We're not politicians. We don't have much political clout, and we're far too busy to leave our classrooms much. But no longer can we close our classroom doors and focus solely on teaching. For the first time in my career, I and many of my colleagues are finding ourselves in the untenable position where we have to make the impossible choice between developing rigorous, engaging curriculum that we know will benefit our students, giving feedback to our students like correcting paper, which again we know will benefit our students, or fulfilling the data gathering and testing mandates metered out by the state. There simply aren't enough hours to do it all. It's time to listen to the experts. Get the legislators out of the business of micromanaging public education and recognize that the teachers and their associations and labor leaders have the answers. They are micromanaging us into failure, and that's hurting our students. In my district superintendent's office, there's a plaque, and it reads, "Best practice cannot flourish when best policy has not been established." This is playing out in the classrooms across the state. With the recent reauthorization of the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA, much of the control and the authority that previously was at the federal level has now been shifted to the states. This gives our Utah education leaders a unique opportunity to move away from the policies that have created so much testing of our students. But what's the proper role of testing? All testing policies should honor the principle of multiple lines of evidence, whether we're assessing student achievement, teacher performance, or school success. Multiple measures is a time-honored principle of assessment. Reliance on single measures of assessment create far less valid and less robust conclusions. Currently, the state assessments, only one line of evidence, are being used to evaluate teachers, schools, and districts. We need to emphasize the whole child, not the narrow test-based learning experience that's inherent in No Child Left Behind and the testing and accountability model that's been so heavily criticized. It takes a Utah law student 12 hours to take the bar exam over the span of 2 days. This year, my 8th graders will sit for over 18 hours of state-mandated test exams. These 18 hours of testing represent only the time spent on testing the core subjects, math, English, and science. And they don't include the tests that teachers hold in their classrooms, many of which are also mandated by the state, or other exams like AP testing, keyboard testing, and other mandated national tests like NAEP, Explore, and the ACT. We are losing too much valuable classroom time to constantly test our students. Last summer, the Utah State School Board withdrew from the Utah Public Education Coalition. This is a collaboration that's lasted over 2 decades. This is an alarming development. In addition to the UEA, the coalition represents representatives from the PTA, the Utah School Boards Association, the state's professional organizations for school principals, district superintendents, and non-teaching school employees. The teachers and the parents of Utah have been excused from the table. The policy makers need collaboration with parents and teachers who are the real experts in education issues, and the reform agendas of the past 2 decades have been a failure in a large part because of the fact that teachers and parents were not engaged or valued in the discussions. If this state is to remain strong, if we're to achieve our goals, then we need our youth to receive the best education this state can muster. Our economy is emerging as a national leader. Fuel this budding economy with innovative minds, pioneering creativity, and a stalwart ethical workforce. We built this state on these precepts, and we understand the meaning of determination and sacrifice. We know what it takes to succeed. It takes experience, and it takes education. The Utah legislature, for the sake of our youth and the continued success of this great state, must reconsider its current pattern of underfunding education and ignoring the needs of our students, and ignoring the desires of our Utah parents, and ignoring the expert teachers that are in the classrooms every day. It is what is necessary. It is what is needed, and it is what is right. I'd like to end with a quote from John Taylor, who is the superintendent of Utah schools in 1876 and later the president of the church. "Knowledge is the power through which disease is averted and life prolonged, the masses clothed, fed, and housed, vice punished, and virtue rewarded, by which time and distance are apparently obliterated, making cosmopolitans of us all, and bringing us into close communication with the whole world. These truths, having become axioms, will be both the pleasure and the duty of the Utah legislature to encourage and stimulate a system of education. Please listen to the parents and teachers of Utah. Please fund education. Please do it now.
Hello, my name is Chris Zavala, and I am a 9th grader at T.H. Bell Junior High. I'm excited to have this wonderful opportunity to be able to speak to you all about what it is like to go to public school in Utah. I've been in public education for over 10 years. I found myself sitting in math class, realizing I had lost my worksheet. Upon asking for a replacement for this worksheet, I was told by my math teacher that the math teachers are only allowed to print one worksheet per student, due to the teacher's funding for printing. Later that period, while learning a new concept, I raised my hand to ask a question. My teacher told me to wait and moved from student to student in order to help them. Because of such large classes, I found myself waiting for help. When the class ended, I still had my hand raised, realizing, while looking around, that I was not the only one who still had their hand raised, waiting for help. Because of such large class sizes, teachers don't have enough time to go from student to student and help every single student, and students often leave the class with unsure answers and unanswered questions. I was curious about how often this type of situation occurred. After speaking with my teachers in the math and English departments of my school, I learned that I too am not the only one feeling this frustration with class sizes. In fact, my English teacher told me that many of her students are too intimidated by the large class sizes to ask questions. They feel intimidated by the large class sizes that they are uncomfortable with raising their hands and asking for help.
I've been a mother for 22 years and an educator for 18. And in the time from when my oldest child began her educational career to my youngest, I've seen a great deal of change. And change is a necessary thing, I believe, especially in education. However, what I've seen is my oldest daughter's education change from a student-centered, teacher-centered learning to a scripted, one-size-fits-all type of education that my younger children are receiving. I have a student in college, a student in high school, a student in junior high, and a student in elementary school. And I've seen that progression, I've seen that change as a parent and as a teacher. I've seen my own children completely stressed out by having to take not only the end of year test, but several tests throughout the year to see if they're going to pass that end of year test. I've seen my children feel diminished and embarrassed by receiving a 2 on the end of year test, which somehow is supposed to show that they are not proficient in what they learned throughout the year. Somehow, over the course of the entire year, it's supposed to be encapsulated in one test. Everything that they've learned, every assignment they've done, is supposed to be taken, or supposed to be shown by one score. And as an educator, I know that that is not good practice. Everybody who's an educator knows that that's not good practice. From the time of April to the end of the year, the only talk you hear is of SAGE, our end of year test. Several weeks of instruction is lost to administering the test. All that instruction is gone out the window for a high stake test. So when I, as a parent, receive the score report sometime in the summer, somehow that label, that 2, that not proficient, is supposed to tell me about my child. It's supposed to label their knowledge of science or math or English, when I know for myself that that score doesn't represent who my child is. And I think that score, education is a very ambiguous, it's out here. I tell my students that I teach English. English is out here, and it's difficult sometimes to make it concrete. So I feel that our educational leaders are taking these scores and using them in ways that they shouldn't be used because they're concrete. You can look at a teacher and say, oh, she got all 2s, or her student got a 4, or her student got a 1. It makes it concrete. It's kind of mathy, so I guess they like it. But what that leads to is these non-educators making crucial decisions making curricular decisions. Never set foot in a classroom other than being a student, and somehow that qualifies them to tell me how to do my job. I would never tell a doctor what medicine to prescribe or tell an engineer how to earthquake-proof a building, but I've taken medicine and I've been in buildings. Somehow I'm not qualified to tell them that. So it makes me frustrated that my youngest son is going to encounter this for how much longer. Teaching is really hard work, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it because I've been doing it a long time, for 18 years. And teaching is not about that one score. Teaching is about getting to know those students. They spend a year of their life with me, and it's about knowing who they are and how I can best help them realize their potential. Their potential is not an A, B, C, or D. Their potential is real, and it's my job to help them get from point A to point Z, however that road or that journey leads. So I feel that in our state, I think there are some real changes that need to be made as far as how we assess students and how we look at them as human individuals rather than a commodity or as consumers.
Great, thank you. So we're happy to answer any questions unless you want to do one-on-ones with the speakers. Sure.
Does this panel represent teachers from across the state or one district?
It's not one district. We have Weber, Layton, Davis, Ogden, so several districts.
Hey, I'm wondering, what is the Democratic Party stance on expanding preschool? I know the YMCA works with districts and they have these programs that claim to increase their knowledge when they get into kindergarten, but they actually cost money. And of course, some people are subsidized. What would the party think about raising funding for that?
Well, first of all, I think we need to have full-day kindergarten for all of our classrooms, and then we can look at preschool. And we're competing with the rest of the world these days, so we need to start our children early in the education system. They say you learn to learn in those early years, and so those are the most critical years. And then once they learn to learn, then they can actually learn the materials. So preschool obviously is very important, but full-day kindergarten we think would be the first priority.
Just one more follow-up and I'll be done. I was talking to a principal who said that when a kid doesn't go to a preschool, their grasping what they need to know for kindergarten is so much lower, but if they go to that preschool, it raises like 40–50%. So it seemed to me to be very important.
Preschool is very important. I've been fortunate enough to have my 3 children go through preschool, and you notice the difference. Those children now have a leg up when they're in kindergarten, and that leg up lasts through their entire education system. And so it is critical to have preschool where it's available. But again, kindergarten.
But your priority is kindergarten over preschool for right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
For Democrats to get any momentum or acknowledgement on this issue, what do you guys need? Do you need a lot of phone calls or something?
We need the citizens of Utah to stand up and say, we need to recover from the 20 years that you've spent decreasing our funding towards education to the tune of billions of dollars. A 5% increase sounds good, but at the end of the day, don't pat yourselves on the back, Utah State Legislature, because we're not anywhere near out of the hole that you've dug for us.
Do you have a budget proposal for any of this?
Obviously, our state legislature is the one who puts together our budgets, and our Democratic leaders over the next several weeks before the legislative session starts, we'll be talking about those budget proposals, but we don't have those just yet. But I would say what we really need is a permanent funding system that will fund education to the amount that it needs to have lower class sizes, better teacher pay, and better resources for those teachers to teach. Right now, we don't have a consistent funding mechanism to fund our education system. All of our income tax, some property tax goes in there, but it's not enough, and we need to make our education system a priority in terms of funding. Okay, thank you. And our speakers are here, and others, if you want to speak with them.